Buddha, or Buddha Gautama, also known as Shakyamuni Buddha, was a great spiritual master from ancient India. Born as Prince Siddhartha Gautama in 5th century BC, he would have naturally inherited the vast wealth of a kingdom. However, the prince one day left the palace life in search of spiritual knowledge. After years of contemplative seeking, the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. He then shared the merits of his practice by providing a method for other sentient beings to be freed from the cycle of death and rebirth. The rich treasury of Buddha's spiritual teachings on universal truths are studied and revered to this day for their deep wisdom and compassion. Today we would like to share with you the sage teachings of the Buddha, Chapter 1 of the Sutra of the Lotus of the Wonderful Dharma, also known as the Lotus Sutra. The Sutra of the Lotus of the Wonderful Dharma, or Lotus Sutra. Chapter 1, Introduction. This is what I heard. At one time the Buddha was in Rajagriha, staying on Mount Gridrakuta. Accompanying him were a multitude of leading monks numbering 12,000 persons. All were arhats, or persons who have attained liberation from the cycle of birth and death, whose outflows had come to an end, who had no more earthly desires, who had attained what was to their advantage, and had put an end to the bonds of existence, and whose minds had achieved a state of freedom.
Their names were Ogyata Kondinya, Mahakoshyapa, Uruvirwakashyapa, Gaya Koshwapa, Nadi Koshyapa, Sariputra, Great Modgayana, Mahakatyayana, Aniruddha, Kapina, Gayampati, Rivata, Plindewatsya, Mahagostila, Nanda, Purna Maitrayani Putra, Sabhuti, Ananda, and Rahula. All were like these, great arhats who were well known to others. There were also 2,000 persons, some of whom were still learning, and some who had completed their learning.
There was the nun Mahaprajapati with her 6,000 followers, and there was Rahula's mother, the nun Yashodhara, with her followers. There were bodhisattvas, or spiritual practitioners, and mahasattvas, or great saints, 80,000 of them, none of them ever regressing in their search for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, or the highest perfection. All had gained dharanis, or retention of high levels of mindfulness and insight through spiritual practice, delighted in preaching, were eloquent, and turned the wheel of the Dharma that knows no regression. They had made offerings to immeasurable hundreds and thousands of Buddhas, in the presence of various Buddhas had planted numerous roots of virtue, had been constantly praised by the Buddhas, had trained themselves in compassion, were good at entering the Buddha wisdom, and had fully penetrated the great wisdom and reached the farther shore. Their fame had spread throughout immeasurable worlds, and they were able to save countless hundreds of thousands of living beings.
Their names were Bodhisattva Manjushri, Bodhisattva Perceiver of the world's sounds, Bodhisattva Gainer of great authority, Bodhisattva Constant exertion, Bodhisattva Never resting, Bodhisattva Jeweled Palm, Bodhisattva Medicine King, Bodhisattva Brave Donor, Bodhisattva Jeweled Moon, Bodhisattva Moonlight, Bodhisattva Full Moon, Bodhisattva Great Strength, Bodhisattva Immeasurable Strength, Bodhisattva Transcending the Threefold World, Bodhisattva Bhadra Bala, Bodhisattva Maitreya, Bodhisattva Jeweled Accumulation, and Bodhisattva Guiding Leader. Bodhisattvas and Mahatsattva's, such as these numbering 80,000, were in attendance.
At that time Shakra Devanam Indra, with his followers, 20,000 sons of gods, also attended. There were also the sons of God's rare moon, pervading fragrance, jeweled glow, and the 4 great heavenly kings, along with their followers, 10,000 sons of gods. Present were the sons of gods, freedom and great freedom, and their followers, 30,000 sons of gods. Present were King Brahma, Lord of the Saha world, the great Brahma Shiking, and the great Brahma Lightbright, and their followers, 12,000 sons of gods.
There were 8 dragon kings, the dragon king Nanda, the dragon king Upananda, the dragon king Sagara, the dragon king Basuki, the dragon king Takshika, the dragon king Anavatapta, the dragon king Manaswin, the dragon king Utpalaka, each with several hundreds of thousands of followers. There were 4 Kimnara, or celestial musician, half-human, half-bird kings, the Kimnara king Great Dharma, the Kimnara king upholding the Dharma, each with several hundreds of thousands of followers. There were 4 Gandharva, a race of demigods, kings, and Gandharva king Pleasant, the Gandharva king Pleasant Sound, the Gandharva beautiful sound, each with several hundreds of thousands of followers.
There were 4 Asura, or lowest rank of deities or demigods, kings, the Asura king Balan, the Asura king Karaskanda, the Asura king Vimachitran, and the Asura king Rahu, each with several hundreds of thousands of followers. There were 4 Garuda, or beautiful wise bird creature that combines the features of gods and animals, kings, the Garuda king Great Majesty, the Garuda king Great Body, the Garuda king Great Fullness, and the Garuda king As One Wishes, each with several hundreds of thousands of followers. And there was King Ajatashatru, the son of Vaidehi, with several hundreds of thousands of followers. Each of these, after bowing in obeisance before the Buddha's feet, withdrew and took a seat to one side.
At that time, the world-honored one, surrounded by the 4 kinds of believers, received offerings and tokens of respect, and was honored and praised. And for the sake of the Bodhisattvas he preached the great Vehicle Sutra entitled Immeasurable Meanings, a Dharma or true teaching to instruct the Bodhisattvas, one that is guarded and kept in mind by the Buddhas.
When the Buddha had finished preaching this sutra, he sat with his legs crossed in lotus position, and entered into the samadhi of the place of immeasurable meanings, his body and mind never moving. At that time heaven rained down Mandarava flowers, great Mandarava flowers, Manjushaka flowers, and great Manjushaka flowers, scattering them over the Buddha and over the great assembly, and everywhere the Buddha world quaked and trembled in 6 different ways.
At that time, the monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, heavenly beings, dragons, yakshas, or nature spirits, Gandharvas, or a race of demigods, Asuras, lowest rank of deities or demigods, Garudas, beautiful wise bird creature of Buddhist myth that combines the features of gods and animals, Kimnaras, celestial musicians, half human and half bird, Mahoragas, or great serpents, human and non-human beings in the assembly, as well as the petty kings and wheel-turning sage kings. All those in the great assembly, having gained what they had never had before, were filled with joy, and, pressing their palms together, gazed at the Buddha with a single mind.
At that time the Buddha emitted a ray of light from the tuft of white hair between his eyebrows, one of his characteristic features, lighting up 18,000 worlds in the eastern direction. There was no place that the light did not penetrate, reaching downward as far as the Vichi hell and upward to the Akanishta heaven.
From this world one could see the living beings in the 6 paths of existence in all of those other lands. One could likewise see the Buddhas present at that time in those other lands, and could hear the sutra teachings which those Buddhas were expounding. At the same time one could see the monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen who had carried out religious practices and attained the way. One could also see the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattva's who, through various causes and conditions and various types of faith and understanding, and in various forms and aspects were carrying out the way of the Bodhisattva. And one could also see the Buddhas who had entered parinirvana, the state into which one who has attained nirvana passes at death. Towers adorned with the 7 treasures were erected for the Buddha's relics.
At that time the Bodhisattva Maitreya had this thought: now the world-honored one has manifested these miraculous signs, but what is the cause of these auspicious portents? Now the Buddha, the world-honored one, has entered into samadhi. An unfathomable event such as this is seldom to be met with. Whom shall I question about this? Who can give me an answer?